If you are reading these lines at night, please do not look behind you. Don't look into the dark corners of the room where the screen light cannot reach, because that is where it likes to hide the most. My name is Alex. I am 26 years old and a freelance art restorer. My job is mainly buying old damaged paintings from estate sales, cleaning them, and reselling them to local collectors for 3 times the price. It is a job that requires meticulousness, patience, and sometimes a bit of luck. But that damn luck ended on the 14th of October. That day, it rained heavily. I drove to an isolated house located at the end of Route 42 on the edge of town. It was a Victorian-style house, built in the 1920 seconds, with yellowed paint peeling off in large patches, revealing the pitch-black wood underneath like necrotic wounds. The owner had just passed away, a reclusive old man named Arthur Blackwood, and his descendants were selling off everything in a hurry to divide the assets. The air inside the house was thick, reeking of dampness mixed with the smell of old mothballs. I skimmed through the dust-covered furniture, feeling there was nothing worth much until I walked into the study on the first floor. It lay there, leaning against the long-extinguished fireplace. It was a 60x90 cm oil portrait, encased in an extremely exquisitely carved but heavy oak frame. The person in the painting was a middle-aged gentleman, wearing a 19th century-style black suit, slicked-back glossy hair, and a face stern to the point of harshness. But what attracted me immediately were the eyes. The artist, whoever it was, had used an extremely skillful eye painting technique. Those ash-gray eyes seemed to have infinite depth, reflecting the dim light of the room. No matter which angle I stood at, I had the feeling he was looking straight at me. Not a friendly look, but a scrutinizing, judging look, as if I were a filthy intruder. I bent down to check the price. The tag showed a number that stunned me. $15. $15 for an original 19th century oil painting? This frame alone is worth at least $200 if I clean off the old varnish. You like it? A raspy voice rang out right next to my ear, making me jump. It was the landlord's daughter, a gaunt woman with deep dark circles under her eyes. She stood less than half a meter from me, arms crossed tightly over her chest as if hugging herself. Yes, I tried to regulate my breathing, heart still pounding in my chest. The painting technique is very good, but why is the price so cheap? The woman didn't look at the painting. She stared out the window, where rain was lashing against the glass. My father hated it, but he never dared to throw it away. You take it. $10 is fine. Just get it out of here right now. I should have recognized the fear in her voice. I should have paid attention to the fact that she took a step back when I touched the frame. The wood was freezing cold, at least 10 degrees colder than the room temperature, making my fingertips numb as if I had just touched ice. But greed and professional excitement blinded me. I paid $15, wrapped the painting in a felt cloth, and hurriedly carried it to the car. Arriving at my studio apartment at 5:30 p.m., I placed the painting on an easel in the middle of the living room. Under the specialized bright white LED light, the painting appeared clear in every detail. The slight crackle ear proved its age, but the man's face remained intact and sharp. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat admiring my trophy. The chills from Arthur's house had disappeared, replaced by satisfaction. I took a photo to send to Sarah, my girlfriend, with the message, "Look, what a bargain I snagged." This old man looks a bit grumpy, but the frame is amazing. I didn't know that was the first mistake. And also, the last moment of peace in my life. That night, while I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed, I heard a strange sound from the living room. Click. It sounded like someone had just placed a heavy object on a wooden table. Very light, very decisive. I spit out the toothpaste foam, held my breath, and listened. Silence enveloped the apartment, only the sound of the refrigerator humming. Probably the neighbor's cat jumping onto the balcony, I reassured myself. But when I turned off the living room light to go to sleep, my eyes accidentally glanced at the painting one last time. I froze. Something was wrong. Earlier, when I bought it, I remembered very clearly the corners of the man's mouth in the painting turned down, creating a frowning, stern face. But now, under the dim light of the street lamp casting in from the window, the left corner of his mouth seemed to be slightly quirked up, just a millimeter. Very small, but enough to turn that stern face into a sarcastic, disdainful smile. I rubbed my eyes, turned on my phone flashlight to inspect closely. Still that face. Maybe I was too tired and started seeing things. I turned off the light, turned my back to go to the bedroom, trying to shake off the chill running down my spine. I didn't know that in the darkness behind my back, those ash-gray eyes were still staring wide open, and it was watching my every step. I woke up at 9:15 the next morning with a headache splitting like a hammer. It didn't feel like I just woke up, but like I had been running a marathon all night. Muscles aching, throat parched, and a strange metallic taste lingering in my mouth, like the taste of a rusty spoon. But the first thing that hit my senses wasn't the headache, but the smell. My apartment usually always smelled of roasted coffee or the scent of gentle fabric softener, but this morning, the air was thick with the smell of damp earth. Not the pleasant smell of earth after rain, but the pungent, acrid smell of long stagnant swamp mud and rotting flowers. It wafted, off and on, making me wrinkle my nose in discomfort. I dragged my steps out of the bedroom, calling out, "Jasper, breakfast time, buddy." Jasper is my 6-year-old fat tabby cat. Normally, just hearing the sound of a pâté can opening, he would dash from anywhere and wrap around my legs. But today, absolute silence. I found him cowering under the bed in the bedroom, eyes wide open, pupils dilated to the max, pitch black. When I reached out to pull him out, Jasper hissed a piercing sound, a sound I had never heard from him, and scratched my hand hard, leaving a long bleeding streak. What the hell? I pulled my hand back, looking at the bleeding scratch. Jasper backed deeper into the darkest corner under the bed, whole body trembling, eyes still staring straight at the bedroom door, pointing directly to the living room, where the painting was. I hastily wrapped a paper towel around my hand and walked out to the living room. The painting still lay on the easel, silent. Daylight shining in made it look much more normal. The man's face was still stern, gray eyes still deep. The smirk I saw last night seemed to have disappeared, or perhaps daylight had blurred out. The hallucinations of the dark. Just my imagination running wild, I muttered, laughing at myself. I started the restoration work. I pulled the stool closer to the easel, put on rubber gloves, and prepared the specialized cleaning solution. The moment I sat down in front of the painting, the temperature dropped abruptly. I'm not exaggerating. The thermostat on the wall showed 23 degrees Celsius, 73 degrees Fahrenheit, but the area within a 1-meter radius around the painting was as cold as if I were opening a freezer door. The cold didn't spread. It concentrated, condensed right in front of my face. My arm hairs stood up on end. I tried to ignore the cold, dipped the cotton ball in solvent, and began to gently wipe the bottom right corner of the painting, where the dark background paint layer was most covered in dust. Swish. Swish. The sound of cotton rubbing against the dry canvas sounded unusually loud in the quiet room. As I wiped away the gray dust, the pitch black of the vest appeared glossy. And then, I felt it. A breath. Light, but very clear. It breathed onto the nape of my neck, carrying the smell of mold and rotting flowers I smelled in the morning. It was cold, damp, making my scalp numb. I spun around. No one there. Windows closed. Door locked tight. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned back to look at the painting, and this time, I swear to God, I saw an undeniable change. The eyes. Earlier, when I started wiping the right corner, the man's eyes were looking straight ahead. But now, those ash-gray irises had glanced down. They were looking at my hand. At exactly the spot where I was placing the cotton ball, my fingers trembled violently, dropping the cotton ball to the floor. It hit the ground with a wet splat, even though it was only soaked in a little fast-evaporating solvent. I stood up abruptly, backed up 3 steps, breathing heavily. I reached for the phone on the desk, opening the photo gallery. I needed to recheck the photo I took yesterday to send to Sarah. I needed to prove I wasn't crazy. But when the photo appeared on the screen, the phone nearly slipped from my hand. The blood in my body seemed to freeze. I stared at the phone screen, then looked up at the painting, then looked down at the phone again. My throat choked with bitterness, a feeling of nausea rising from my stomach. In the photo I took at 5:45 p.m. yesterday, the man in the painting was sitting in a completely relaxed posture. His hands rested lightly on his thighs, fingers relaxed, expressing authority but calmness. But right now, right before my eyes, those hands had changed. On the rough canvas surface, his right hand was no longer placed on his thigh. It was gripping the armrest of the wooden chair in the painting tightly. The knuckles protruded white, veins bulging clearly, creating a sense of extreme gripping force. He no longer looked relaxed. He looked like he was bracing himself, gathering momentum to prepare to stand up. "Impossible," I whispered, voice trembling. "The oil paint is dry and hard. It cannot move." I reached out to touch the hand part in the painting. I expected the rough, dry feeling of century-old paint, but no. My fingertip touched something, soft and sticky. I pulled my hand back as if electrocuted. On the tip of my index finger was a smear of cloudy white mixed with gray. Wet paints. This painting is over 100 years old. The outer varnish layer has turned yellow, but at that hand's position, the paint was still wet and freezing cold, as if someone had just swiped it on seconds ago. And that stench surged up strongly again, the smell of sewage and rotting flesh, so pungent I had to cover my nose with my hand. I backed away, bumping into the table edge and knocking over the coffee cup. Black-brown liquid spilled splotchily on the floor, but I didn't care. Survival instinct in me was screaming, "Cover it up, don't let it see you." I ran into the bedroom, yanked off the white bedsheet. I returned to the living room, threw the sheet covering the easel and the painting completely. That stern face and those tensed hands disappeared behind the white fabric. The room seemed to warm up a bit immediately. The ringing in my ears subsided. "You're just too stressed, Alex," I muttered to myself, pacing back and forth in the kitchen. Maybe the painting was painted over by someone recently? Maybe your solvent layer melted the paint? I tried to cling to those scientific explanations all afternoon. I locked myself in the bedroom, put on headphones, turned the music up to max volume to drown out the terrifying silence of the house. Jasper still wouldn't come out from under the bed. I had to push the food dish deep inside for him, but he just growled in response. Night fell. Around 2 a.m., I woke up due to a strange sound. Not a knock on the door, nor the wind. It was the sound of fabric being stretched, rip, rip, like the sound of someone using fingernails to scratch hard on the back of a taut canvas. The sound came from the living room. I lay still, eyes wide open, staring at the pitch-black ceiling. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. Swish. Next was the sound of cloth sliding to the floor. The sound was very light, like the sigh of a ghost. I knew what it was. The bedsheet I used to cover the painting had fallen down. I didn't dare go out to check. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child, praying for morning to come quickly. But the horror didn't stop there. About 10 minutes later, I heard a new sound. It was no longer scratching or fabric falling. Clop, clop, clop. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. It rang out on the wooden living room floor, the sound of hard-soled dress shoes hitting the floorboards. Hard-soled dress shoes hitting the floorboards. It walked around the living room, stopped a bit, then continued, and its direction, and was moving gradually towards the hallway leading to my bedroom. The footsteps stopped right in front of my bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. Through the gap under the door, I saw the shadow of a pair of feet blocking the light from the street lamp. The black shadow stood there, motionless. And then, I heard the sound of the round brass doorknob of my room slowly turning. Creak. The rip sound of the canvas tearing apart was the last straw. The previous paralyzing fear instantly transformed into a frantic panic. Survival instinct screamed in my face. If that pitch-black thing flowed all the way out, or if his head squeezed through that tier, you would die. I didn't think anymore. I grabbed the thickest sofa, blanket, rushing to cover the oozing painting, ignoring the low growl emitting from inside the wooden frame. I hugged both the painting and the easel up, but it was absurdly heavy. The normal oak frame was only about 5 kilograms, but now it weighed like a tombstone. I staggered, carrying it to the door, kicking the apartment door hard to fling it open. I didn't care about closing the door. I ran down the 3 flights of stairs, breath-catching, sweat mixed with tears blurring my glasses. Outside, it was freezing, drizzling rain. The apartment complex's central trash dump was located in a hidden corner behind the building. I ran there, used all my strength to throw the painting hard into the large blue metal bin. Bam! The collision sound rang out ear-piercingly. I hoped glass shattered, frame broke, or anything that could destroy it. Still not reassured, I picked up a broken paving brick nearby, threw it hard into the trash bin, weighing down on where I just threw the painting. Then I slammed the trash bin lid shut, engaged the safety latch. It's over, I panted, hands resting on the freezing trash bin lid. You stay there. I returned to the apartment, locked the door, chained the latch, and even dragged the shoe cabinet to block the entrance. I washed my hands with water so hot the skin turned red to scrub away the invisible feeling of filth. I took 2 sedative pills immediately, crawled under the blanket, and forced myself to sleep. I needed to forget those ash-gray eyes. Sleep came quickly, but heavily, without dreams. I woke up because the harsh sunlight was shining straight into my face. My head was heavy from the hangover of the pills. I squinted, trying to focus on where I was. I was in my bedroom. Everything seemed normal. Birds singing chirpy outside the window. But then, I felt something gritty under my back. I sat up, touched the bedsheet. Sand and crumbled soil. My whole bed was full of dry, black-brown soil crumbs, scattered on the pillow, on the blanket. A chill ran down my spine. I slowly looked up at the wall opposite the bed. My heart stopped for a second. It was there. The painting. It wasn't lying on the ground. It wasn't leaning against the wall. It was hanging neatly on the opposite wall, at a position just high enough for my eye level when lying in bed. The nail had been driven into the wall, the hanging wire adjusted perfectly. The face of the man in the painting had returned to normal stern, quiet, sitting on the chair in the original posture. The tear on the fabric disappeared. The black liquid disappeared. Only the frame had changed. The exquisite oak frame was now covered in foul-smelling mud. Dirty water from the dump was still oozing out, running in long streaks down my clean white wall. "Impossible," I whispered, backing towards the headboard. I threw it away. The door was locked. I looked down at my trembling hands resting on the blanket, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. My 10 fingertips were pitch black. My palms were scratched, covered in small wood splinters and green rust, the kind of rust from the metal trash bin lid. On the floor, a trail of muddy footprints went from the main door, where the shoe cabinet had been pushed neatly aside, leading straight into the bedroom, climbing onto my bed, then going over to the wall where the painting hung. Those footprints were mine. Last night, in the sedation stupor, I myself had gotten up. I myself had opened the door, went down to the trash dump, dug it up from the foul waste pile. I myself brought it back, and I myself nailed it to the wall so he could watch me sleep. I was not just a victim. I was his puppet. I didn't dare sleep anymore. I spent the whole morning scrubbing my hands with a stiff brush, until the skin was raw, red, and bleeding. But the feeling of filthy mud under the fingernails still wouldn't disappear. I knew I couldn't throw the painting away again. At least not now, when my mind had been manipulated by it to the point of picking it back up myself. I needed to understand what I was facing. I took the painting down from the wall, placed it on the kitchen table. The oak frame that was banged up in the trash bin yesterday had a long crack on the left edge. When I wiped away the mud stuck there, I discovered the crack wasn't from the impact. It was a gap of a secret compartment. Inside the hollow part of that thick wooden frame, stuffed deep inside, was a small black leather-bound notebook, moldy and smelling of dampness. My hand trembled as I turned the first page. It was Arthur Blackwood's diary. The initial handwriting was neat, flowery, but towards the later pages, it became scribbly, insane, with places where the pen pressed hard enough to tear the paper. The 12th of November, 1924. I was wrong. I thought I was a painter, but actually I am a jailer. He is not a model. He is something I summoned, but cannot drive away. The only way to detain him is to lock him inside these layers of oil paint, using my own blood mixed into the paint to make chains. I swallowed, throat dry. I flipped quickly through the middle pages. The 3rd of February, 1925. It is hungry. I hear it scratching the back of the canvas every night. I must set rules. If someone finds this notebook after I die, remember 3 things carefully. Never break them, if you don't want to take my place. Rule 1. Never let fresh blood contact the painting surface or frame. Blood is the key to open the door. I looked down at my bandaged hand. The cat scratch from the other day. The cut when I scraped paint. And worst of all, last night I cut my own neck, albeit shallowly, right in the bedroom. I broke this rule. Rule 2. Always cover the painting when the sun sets. It is most active in the dark, but it needs moonlight to see the path into your dreams. I remembered the first night I left it bare. The second night, the cloth fell down. I broke this rule. Rule 3. Most important. Never look into his eyes for more than 10 seconds continuously. He is the observer. When you look into his eyes, he is also looking through into your mind, copying your memories, learning to become you. Eye contact is the bridge for him to cross over. This rule sent a chill down my spine. The phone dropped from my hand onto the table with a clunk. I am an art restorer. What is my job? It is staring at every millimeter of the painting for hours on end. I used a magnifying glass to examine those ash-gray eyes, analyzing every brushstroke, every layer of color. I looked into his eyes not just for 10 seconds, but for hours every day for the past 3 days. I didn't just open the door. I rolled out the red carpet, inviting him in. I flipped to the last page of the diary. The handwriting here was very sloppy, big and bold, as if written in extreme panic. It has finished learning. It no longer acts like me. It starts to have expressions I never painted. If you see him, smile. Run. Run immediately, and don't look back. Burn the house if you have to, but don't let him touch you. I slowly looked up from the notebook, my eyes directed towards the painting lying on the kitchen table a few spans away. In the painting, the man was no longer sitting sternly. He was resting his chin on 2 hands, face leaning close to the picture plane, and he was smiling. Not a mysterious slight smile, but a grinning, gum-bearing, insane and ecstatic smile. The ash-gray eyes narrowed into 2 slits, staring at me full of mockery, and more horribly, his mouth was moving. I didn't hear a sound, but I could read his lip movements very clearly, repeating a single word: "Thank you." Suddenly, from his eye sockets in the painting, 2 streams of black liquid began to gush out like tears. But it didn't flow down his cheeks. It flowed out of the painting, dripping drip drop onto my oak kitchen table. I backed away, slamming my back against the refrigerator, creating a loud boom that shook the small kitchen. My eyes were glued to the stream of black liquid flowing from the man's eye sockets in the painting. It was neither like water nor paint. It was thick, boiling, and bubbling with tiny air bubbles. When it touched the wooden table surface, it hissed like acid corroding metal, emitting white smoke that smelled of burning hair. "Stop! I said stop!" I screamed, grabbing a cleaver from the magnetic knife rack on the wall. As if in response to my scream, the kitchen ceiling light began to flicker madly. Zap. Zap. Pop. The light bulb exploded. Shards of glass fell scattering onto the floor. The kitchen sank into dim darkness, with only a little faint light casting in from the living room window. In that twilight, I saw something unimaginable. The painting on the table was vibrating violently. The sound of canvas cracking like being torn rang out continuously. And then a wet, slimy sound rang out like a large fish thrashing in a mud puddle. Flop. I hurriedly turned on my phone, flashlight, pointing the beam straight at the table's surface. My throat choked, speechless. The painting was still there. The wooden frame was still there. But the man had disappeared. On the yellowed canvas background, the velvet armchair was now empty. No one sat there anymore. No stern face, no clenched hand, no grotesque smile. Only the gloomy background of the 19th century room with the fireplace and draped curtains remained. Where did he go? The answer came immediately, in the form of a sound coming from behind my back, right in the hidden corner of the fridge. Inhale. A deep, prolonged, raspy inhalation, like the sound of a punctured lung trying to get air. I spun around, swinging the meat cleaver into empty space in extreme panic. "Get out! Get out!" No one was there. Only thick darkness in the corner of the wall. But when I swept the flashlight down to the floor, I saw them. Footprints. Soaking wet footprints, black as tar, starting from the leg of the kitchen table where the painting was, and leading straight into the darkness of the living room. Those footprints were not from dress shoes. They were bare footprints, long, deformed toes, gripping the wooden floor tightly, and the distance between footsteps was huge, proving their owner must have a terribly long stride, or was moving at extreme speed. I was in the house with him. No more glass barrier. No more canvas prison. He is here, in this 3D space, breathing the same air as me. I heard a giggling sound. This time, it was no longer inside my head. It was physical sound, reflecting off the walls. It echoed from all directions, making me unable to locate where he was. Alex. That voice came from the Bluetooth speaker I left on the TV shelf. He is playing with me. Alex. Look at me. I snapped back towards the living room. On the opposite white wall, the shadow of a gaunt man, tall and lanky, was slowly growing up. That shadow stretched, twisted unnaturally, head touching the ceiling. The shadow's 2 hands raised, fingers long as dry branches, slowly reaching out. reaching out from the wall surface, becoming solid black, 3D masses lunging towards me. He was not just a ghost. He was a living mass of matter, woven from darkness and rotten oil paint. I backed up, tripped over glass shards on the floor, falling backward. The knife flew out of my hand, sliding far away. And from the darkness above the ceiling, right directly above my head, an upside-down face slowly descended. Ash gray eyes, ear-to-ear grin. "Found you," he whispered, and a drop of pitch-black saliva dripped onto my forehead, burning hot like glowing coal. The pitch-black drop of liquid hit my forehead with a sizzling sound, stinging like a cigarette butt pressed into flesh. That blinding pain triggered my paralyzed survival instinct. I rolled to the side, right at the moment his long, pale fingers plunged into the wooden floor, right where my throat had just lain. The sound of fingernails scratching wood screeched ear-piercingly, leaving 5 deep grooves on the floor. I scrambled up, slipping on shards of broken glass, rushing towards the desk where I kept my painting tools. I needed a weapon. The meat cleaver had flown away. The baseball bat was too far. "You can't escape." His voice no longer came from the speaker. It rang out right behind my back, accompanied by a freezing breath blowing on my nape. A freezing hand, hard as iron pliers, grabbed my left ankle. The force was so strong I was yanked backward, falling face down on the floor. My chin hit the ground hard, painful. I tried to kick my right foot back, my heel touching something both hard and slimy, like a boulder covered in slippery moss. He was dragging me towards the wall, where the pitch-black shadow was waiting to swallow me. "Let me go!" I screamed, hands groping on the floor in desperation. My fingers touched a glass jar. It was the jar of turpentine I used to wash brushes these past days. Inside was full of a mixture of mineral spirits and melted old oil paint, creating a murky, foul-smelling liquid. I grabbed the jar, spun around, and used all my strength to splash that liquid straight into the empty space behind my back. Splash! Solvent sprayed into the air. It should have fallen to the floor, but no. It hit something invisible hovering right over me. For a second, the monster's form appeared vividly thanks to the coating liquid. It was a distorted figure, towering and lanky, skinny to the bone. His head was oversized for his body, and his face, God. His face was flat like a white sheet of paper. No nose, no mouth. Only 2 deep hollow eye sockets oozing pitch-black water. The solvent layer corroded his surface, making him screech, a piercing sound like metal rubbing together. "Triple AAHH." He let go of my leg, clutching his face. It seemed the chemical solvent caused him pain. A creature created from oil paint and resentment. I didn't wait for him to recover. I scrambled up, ran backwards towards the kitchen, grabbing a box cutter on the table. He stood there, in the middle of the living room, solvent dripping to the floor, revealing a body becoming transparent again. But I still saw those ash gray eyes. It was looking at me with extreme hatred. And then, I saw him start to transform. He didn't attack me anymore. He backed up, pressing his back against the blank wall where I used to hang the painting. His body melted, spreading on the wall like an ink stain, then slowly gathered, taking shape. He was trying to recreate the painting right on my house wall, but this time, no frame needed, no canvas needed. He turned the living room wall itself into his canvas. And more horribly, he was painting one more character into that painting. He is painting me. On the white wall, a pitch-black silhouette was gradually appearing beside him. It had my shape, kneeling, head bowed, hands tied tight. I understood what he intended to do. He didn't need to kill me physically. He was performing the final ritual to capture my soul, locking me in this wall forever with him. I remembered Arthur's diary. Blood is the key to open the door, but to close the door requires a living sacrifice. 1 life exchanged for 1 imprisonment. Arthur didn't specify what he sacrificed, but I knew I had no time to speculate. He was about to finish painting my face on the wall. Once he finishes painting the eyes, I'm done for. I looked around the kitchen in desperation. My eyes stopped at the knife in my hand, then looked down at my wrist. But then, I heard a weak cry from under the kitchen cabinet. Meow. Jasper. My cat. He had been hiding there for days. A cruel, terrible thought flashed in my mind. A choice I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life. But I wanted to live. I lunged towards the cabinet. I dragged Jasper out from under the cabinet. The cat screamed miserably. its four legs kicking wildly, sharp claws shredding my bare arm. My blood seeped out, mixing with dirt and sweat. I looked into his wide, terrified eyes. Jasper had been with me for 6 years. He was the only thing that welcomed me every time I came home from work. He was the only family I had in this damn city. On the wall, the demonic painting was nearing completion. He had finished drawing my body and was starting to draw the eyes. Once those eyes opened on the wall, I knew my soul would be sucked into it forever. One life exchanged for one imprisonment. The words in the diary echoed in my ears. I raised the box cutter, hand trembling violently. Jasper seemed to sense the killing intent. He stopped crying, just stared at me, body stiff. I gritted my teeth so hard my gums bled. "I'm sorry," I whispered. And then, I threw Jasper hard towards the bedroom. The cat landed on the soft mattress, let out a cry, then dashed under the bed. I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill him. If I have to die, I will die as a human, not as a monster. But I still needed a sacrifice. He needed life. He needed fresh flesh and blood to satisfy the hunger that had lasted a century. I turned back to look at the empty picture frame lying on the kitchen table. That was the cage. I needed to lure the beast into the cage. I placed my left hand in the middle of the blank canvas. Taking a deep breath, I held the box cutter with my right hand, pressed the sharp blade hard into my left palm. Thwack. The sky-piercing pain made me let out a shrill scream, tears gushing out. I didn't just slash a line. I pressed deep, feeling the metal blade severing flesh, touching tendons and bones. Fresh blood poured out, gushing, bright red, hot, soaking into the dry canvas surface. The metallic smell of blood rose immediately, overpowering even the stench of the demon. "Hey!" I screamed, voice cracking with pain, raising the blood-drenched hand towards the wall. "You want life? I give you life. Fresh blood here, pure, come and eat." On the living room wall, the black shadow's movement froze. He stopped drawing. His distorted head slowly turned towards me, towards the pungent smell of blood radiating from the kitchen table. A hissing sound, like a boiling kettle. He was craving. My blood, my voluntary pain, had an attraction 1,000 times stronger than a soulless drawing on the wall. The black shadow began to peel off the wall surface. It was like peeling a giant decal, but the sound was much more terrible. Rip. Rip. The sound of muscle fibers tearing. He separated himself from the plaster, falling to the floor as a pile of pitch-black viscous liquid, but still retaining a human shape. He crawled towards me. He didn't walk. He slithered, 2 hands clawing the wooden floor, dragging that long deformed body towards the kitchen table. Terrifying speed. I didn't back down. I held the bleeding hand tight on the canvas surface, even though the pain made me want to faint. I had to be the bait until the very last moment. "Come here. Come here." I gritted my teeth. He lunged onto the table, his flat, eyeless, noseless face pressed right up against my face. I felt the bone-chilling cold from his body, and then he bowed down, burying his face into my blood-soaked palm on the painting. I felt a terrible suction force. He wasn't licking the blood. He was entering into that bloodstream. He was dissolving his pitch-black body into the blood pool on the canvas fabric, like water flowing down a drain. It felt like thousands of maggots were crawling through the open wound on my hand to get inside the painting. Painful, disgusting, nauseating. When his last leg disappeared into the fabric face, I pulled my hand back, falling backwards, clutching my bleeding wrist. On the table, the painting convulsed violently. The oil paint layers began to rearrange themselves. Black spread out, shaping into the gloomy background. The red from my blood turned into the rug, and in the middle, the shape of the man in black slowly emerged. He sat back into the chair, but this time, his face was covered in blood, my blood, and those ash-gray eyes, they were shut tight. He was full, or at least, he had accepted the sacrifice. I sprang up, using my uninjured right hand, to grab the bottle of industrial superglue I used to fix wooden furniture. Pouring it all over the frame edge and the glass pane, I had found a spare plexiglass sheet in the cupboard. I pressed the glass tight into the frame, sealing him inside along with the metallic smell of my own blood. I wrapped duct tape haphazardly around the frame, crying and laughing like a madman while wrapping. "Stay there. You stay right there for me." 89 days have passed since that night. I didn't sell the painting. I couldn't let it fall into anyone else's hands. I didn't burn it either, because I feared fire would release something inside, that pitch black smoke into the air, to haunt the lungs of this whole town. Instead, I buried it. That very night, with a hand wrapped in blood-red bandages, I smashed the concrete floor in the basement of the apartment building, an old storage room no one visited. I dug a hole over a meter deep. I placed the painting, still wrapped tight in duct tape, and the plexiglass layer, inside a fireproof metal chest. I welded the lid shut. Then, I poured 6 bags of cement mixed with rebar on top, leveling it back as before. I moved house the very next day. I left behind all furniture, deposit, and my old life. I drove west, to a small town in Nevada, where all year round there is only burning sun and sand dust. I thought that in a place with no shade and dampness, he wouldn't be able to find me. Theoretically, I was safe. Jasper was still alive, though now he became aggressive and always hissed whenever he saw his own shadow. But I knew it wasn't over. The scar in my left palm where I gave my blood to him never fully healed. It formed a keloid, distorted, purplish-red scar, and whenever it got cold, or whenever I walked into a dark room, that scar would throb in spasms, aching to the bone marrow. It was like a transceiver, reminding me that the connection was still there. But the worst thing wasn't the scar. The worst thing was the mirrors. I covered all mirrors in my new rental house. I shaved by feel. I combed my hair in the dark, because I dared not look at my reflection anymore. Last week, in a moment of absent-mindedness at a gas station, I accidentally looked into the truck's rearview mirror. In that brief moment, I saw myself, but it also wasn't me. The person in the mirror had my face, my hair, but he was smiling at me, that smirking, disdainful smile I saw on the painting the first day. And the eyes. My natural hazel eyes had disappeared. In that reflection, my eyes were ash gray, deep, cold, and hungry. I blinked. The reflection did not blink. He still stared wide-eyed at me, enjoying the fear rising within me. I understood. Arthur Blackwood was wrong. Blood isn't just the key to open the door. Blood is a covenant. When I gave him my blood to drink, I didn't just lure him back to the painting. I allowed him to flow in my veins. He doesn't need the painting anymore. He doesn't need canvas or oil paint anymore. He is inside me. He is hibernating in my every cell, waiting for the day I grow old and weak, waiting for the day my mind relaxes to take complete control. I am his new portrait. If one day you meet me on the street and see me wearing sunglasses, even though it's raining, please don't ask why. And if you see me take off my glasses and my eyes are ash gray, run. Don't look for more than 10 seconds.